Imagine being all alone in the world, with no family, no home, and no one to care for you. Now, imagine risking your life to save two complete strangers, not knowing it would change everything you thought you knew about yourself. This is the story of Sam, a homeless boy who became a hero, and uncovered a truth that shocked everyone, even him. But here's the twist. This story isn't just about Sam. It's about how one act of kindness can ripple through the lives of so many people, creating connections we never even knew existed. What happened next will leave you speechless. If you're excited about listening to this story, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring and unforgettable stories. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. I'll never forget the first time I heard about Sam. It's funny how some people walk into your life quietly, and yet they change everything. Sam wasn't the kind of kid you'd notice if you passed him on the street. He was small, skinny as a twig, with a mop of messy brown hair and the saddest eyes I've ever seen. He didn't have a home, no family, nothing. Just a tattered backpack and an old jacket that looked like it couldn't keep anyone warm. But Sam, he had something more valuable than any riches, a heart big enough to save lives. Sam spent his days wandering the streets, finding little ways to survive. He'd sit on the corner near the bakery, not begging. He was too proud for that, but hoping someone might drop a piece of bread his way. At night, he'd crawl under a bridge with his stray dog, Rusty, for company. Rusty wasn't much, scruffy, with a tail that wagged like crazy, but he was loyal. And Sam? Well, he had Rusty, and that was enough. Or at least it had to be. One rainy evening, the kind where the sky seems to pour out all its sadness, Sam was huddled under his favorite bridge. The cold wind cut right through his thin clothes, and he wrapped his arms around Rusty, who whimpered softly. Sam looked out at the empty streets, wishing for something he couldn't even name. Was it a home? A family? Just someone who cared? He didn't know. That's when he heard it, a loud screech of tires, the terrible sound of metal crunching against a tree. Sam's heart jumped. He scrambled to his feet, peering into the darkness. A car had crashed just down the road, its headlights flickering like a dying firefly. Smoke was rising, and he could hear faint cries. "Stay here, Rusty," he whispered, though his own voice trembled. Sam ran as fast as his legs could carry him. The rain soaked him to the bone, but he didn't care. As he got closer, he saw the car was upside down, its wheels spinning in the air. Inside, there were two small voices, frightened, crying for help. A boy and a girl, twins, their faces pressed against the glass, eyes wide with fear. "Help us," the boy screamed. Sam didn't think. He just acted. He grabbed a rock from the side of the road and smashed the window. His hands bled, but he barely noticed. He reached in, pulling the little boy out first. The boy clung to him like a lifeline, sobbing into his shoulder. "Your sister," Sam gasped. "I'll get her, I promise." The smoke was thicker now, choking him, but Sam crawled back into the car. The little girl was stuck, her seatbelt jammed. Sam's hands fumbled as he tried to free her, his fingers trembling from fear and the cold. The flames were starting now, small but growing. He could feel the heat licking at his back. "Hold on," he shouted. With one final pull, the seatbelt came loose, and Sam dragged the girl out just as the fire roared to life. He carried her in his arms, stumbling away from the wreckage as the car exploded behind them. By the time he got them both to safety, Sam was shaking all over. The twins, Maya and Liam, he later learned, clung to him, crying into his chest. They were scared, but they were alive. That's what mattered. The sirens came next, flashing lights cutting through the rain. Sam heard the voices of paramedics and police officers shouting, rushing toward them. He should have stayed. He should have told them his name. But something inside him whispered, "You don't belong here. They'll send you away." So before anyone could see him, Sam slipped back into the shadows. He watched from behind a dumpster as the twins were loaded into an ambulance, their parents rushing to their side, crying tears of relief. Nobody noticed the homeless boy standing in the rain, bleeding and cold, watching with a longing he couldn't explain. As Sam turned to leave, Rusty came running to his side, wagging his tail. Sam knelt down, burying his face in Rusty's fur. "I'm fine," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. "They're safe. That's all that matters." And then, like a ghost, Sam disappeared into the night, leaving behind a mystery that no one would soon forget. The next morning, the whole town was buzzing. Everyone was talking about the accident, the car crash on the old Oak Street Bridge, and the mysterious boy who had saved 2 children from certain death. But no one knew his name. No one had even seen him. It was like he was a ghost, a shadow that had melted away into the night. I remember hearing Mrs. Henderson, who runs the flower shop, talking about it with a customer. "They say he was just a boy," she whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "Pulled those kids out of a burning car with his bare hands and disappeared. A guardian angel, that's what he is." A guardian angel. That's what everyone started calling him. But to me, it sounded like they were describing someone who didn't exist, someone too perfect to be real. But Sam was real. I knew it, and I couldn't stop wondering where he was now. The twins' parents, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, were desperate to find him. The Carters were rich, the kind of people who could afford to make things happen, and they weren't about to let their guardian angel slip away without a thank you. They put up flyers all over town, big, colorful ones with bold letters that read, "Hero wanted, $10,000 reward." Everywhere you looked, on telephone poles, shop windows, even the side of the local diner, you'd see those flyers. On TV, they went on the news, begging for the boy to come forward. "We just want to thank him," Mrs. Carter said, tears streaming down her face. "He saved our babies. Please, if you're out there, let us help you." But Sam was watching all of this from the shadows. He didn't know what to do. He'd seen the flyers, heard the news reports, and it made his stomach twist in knots. A reward like that could change his life. But then he'd think, what if they find out I'm just a street kid? What if they send me away? While the town was searching for a hero, Sam was fighting battles of his own. Life on the streets was never easy, but now it felt even harder. A gang of older kids, bullies who ruled the alleys, had caught wind of the reward. "You're the kid they're looking for, aren't you?" Their leader, Max, sneered one afternoon, cornering Sam behind the old library. Max was tall and mean, with a scar that ran down his cheek. He liked to scare people, and he was good at it. "I'm not," Sam said, shrinking back, trying to sound braver than he felt. "Don't lie to me, kid," Max growled. "You're gonna collect that money, and when you do, you're giving it to us. Got it?" Sam didn't answer. He just grabbed Rusty and ran, his heart pounding. He couldn't go to the Carters now, even if he wanted to. Not with Max and his gang watching his every move. It felt like the walls of his world were closing in. But the twins? They hadn't forgotten him. Little Maya, the girl Sam had carried out of the car, kept telling her parents about him. "He had a ripped shirt," she said one night, clutching her teddy bear. And his eyes were sad. But he was nice. He smiled at me. Her brother Liam nodded. "He wasn't like a superhero or anything," he added thoughtfully. "He was just a boy. But he was brave." The Carters took their children's words to heart. They hired private investigators to follow every lead, every small clue. But nothing seemed to lead to Sam. He was always one step ahead, vanishing like smoke before anyone could reach him. And then something happened. Something that brought Sam closer to being found than he ever thought possible. One rainy evening, a man named Mr. Thompson came into the local diner, shaking the water off his coat. He ordered a coffee and started chatting with the waitress. "You hear about that crash last week?" he asked, pulling out a flyer. "They're still looking for that boy. The waitress nodded. Guardian angel, they're calling him. Wonder where he's hiding. Mr. Thompson frowned, as if he were trying to remember something. I saw a kid that night, he said slowly, walking near Oak Street. He was soaking wet, and he had a dog with him. Seemed strange, but I didn't think much of it. The waitress leaned in. What kind of dog? Little thing. Scruffy. Looked like it needed a bath. My heart raced when I heard this. It had to be Sam. And if Mr. Thompson had seen him, it was only a matter of time before someone else did too. Meanwhile, Sam was hiding in an abandoned shed on the edge of town. The rain dripped through the holes in the roof, and Rusty huddled close for warmth. Sam didn't know what to do. Part of him wanted to come forward, to let the Carters thank him and maybe, just maybe, be part of their lives. But the other part of him, the part that had been hurt too many times before, told him to stay hidden. They wouldn't want someone like me, he whispered to Rusty. Nobody ever does. But Sam didn't know that the world was already closing in around him. The Carters wouldn't stop searching. The gang wouldn't stop threatening. And the story of the boy who saved the twins was about to take a turn no one could have predicted. It was one of those nights where the air felt heavy, like something big was about to happen. Sam had been on the run for days, constantly looking over his shoulder. He hadn't eaten much, and he was so tired it felt like his legs might give out any second. But he couldn't stop. Not with Max and his gang hunting him. Not with the whole town looking for him like he was some kind of ghost. Sam had found an old shed at the edge of town, a place where nobody ever went. It was falling apart, with holes in the roof and broken windows, but to Sam, it felt like the safest place in the world. He curled up in the corner with Rusty, his faithful little dog, and tried to stay warm. Just one night, he whispered to Rusty, "We'll figure it out tomorrow." Rusty wagged his tail softly, like he understood. But deep down, Sam knew he couldn't hide forever. What Sam didn't know was that his hiding place wasn't as secret as he thought. Earlier that day, the Carter twins had been walking in the park with their dog, a big golden retriever named Maxie. Maxie was a friendly dog, always sniffing around, and he caught a whiff of something that made him pull hard on the leash. Maya and Liam couldn't hold him back. "Maxie, stop!" Liam yelled, but the dog took off, running faster than they'd ever seen him go. The twins chased Maxie all the way to the old shed, calling out for their parents, who ran after them. When they got to the shed, Maxie was scratching at the door, barking like crazy. Mr. Carter managed to pull the dog back, but that's when they heard a sound from inside. A low, soft whimper. "Is someone in there?" Mrs. Carter asked, her voice trembling. Inside the shed, Sam froze. He heard the barking, the voices. His heart pounded so hard, he thought it might burst. He tried to shush Rusty, but the little dog gave a nervous bark of his own. Before Sam could do anything, the shed door creaked open. And there they were, the Carters. Mr. Carter with his flashlight, Mrs. Carter with her hands over her mouth, and the twins standing behind them, staring with wide eyes. For a moment, nobody said a word. They just looked at each other. "It's him," Maya whispered. "It's the boy. He's our angel." Sam panicked. He scrambled to his feet, clutching Rusty, ready to run. But then Maya stepped forward, her small hand reaching out. "Don't go," she said softly. "Please. It's okay." Her voice stopped Sam in his tracks. He didn't know why, but he couldn't move. He just stood there, trembling, as Maya walked closer. Liam followed, his face lit up with recognition. "You saved us," Liam said. "Why did you run away?" Sam didn't know what to say. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He felt so out of place, standing there in his torn clothes, his dirty face streaked with tears. He wanted to disappear. But then Mrs. Carter stepped forward, her eyes filled with something Sam didn't expect. Kindness. "You don't have to be afraid," she said gently. "We've been looking for you. We just want to thank you." Before Sam could respond, he heard something that made his blood run cold. Footsteps. Heavy, angry footsteps crunching on the gravel outside the shed. He knew who it was before he even saw them. Max and his gang had found him. Well, Max said, stepping into the doorway with a cruel grin. Looks like the whole family's here. How sweet. Mr. Carter moved in front of the twins, shielding them. Who are you? He demanded. What do you want? Max ignored him, his eyes fixed on Sam. We had a deal, kid. You're supposed to hand over that reward money. Now, you're gonna come with us, or things are gonna get ugly. Sam's heart pounded. He wanted to run, to hide, but he couldn't leave the Carters behind. They didn't deserve to get hurt because of him. No, Sam said, his voice shaking but firm. I'm not going with you. Max's grin faded. Wrong answer. What happened next felt like a blur. Max lunged at Sam, but before he could reach him, Rusty sprang forward, barking and biting at Max's leg. Max yelled, kicking at the little dog, but Rusty didn't back down. The commotion gave Mr. Carter just enough time to grab his phone and call the police. Stay back, Mr. Carter shouted, his voice like thunder. The gang hesitated, but Max wasn't giving up. He grabbed a piece of wood from the ground and swung it, aiming for Sam. But before it could hit, Mr. Carter stepped in, knocking it out of his hands. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air. The gang tried to run, but the police were too fast. They were arrested right there, shouting and cursing as they were dragged away. When it was all over, Sam was shaking so hard he thought he might fall. Rusty limped over to him, and Sam scooped the dog into his arms, whispering, "You're so brave, Rusty. You saved us." But then Sam looked up and saw the Carters watching him. Maya and Liam were crying, clinging to their mother's legs. Mrs. Carter knelt down and reached out to Sam. "You're safe now," she said softly. "We're going to take care of you." For the first time in a long time, Sam let himself believe it might be true. He let the tears fall, and when Maya and Liam hugged him, he didn't pull away. For the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone anymore. But none of them knew the truth that was about to come to light. A truth that would change everything. I don't know how to explain what happened next, but it felt like the universe had been waiting for this moment. That night at the shed, something changed in Sam. He'd spent his whole life running, hiding, thinking he didn't belong anywhere. But the Carters didn't see him as just some homeless kid. To them, he was their hero. And for the first time in forever, Sam let himself believe that maybe he could have a place in the world. The Carters brought Sam home that night. I can still picture it. Sam sitting in the back seat of their car, clutching Rusty tightly, his wide eyes taking in the fancy leather seats and soft blankets the twins had insisted on bringing for him. He didn't say much. He just kept glancing out the window, like he was waiting for someone to tell him it was all a mistake. When they arrived at the Carter mansion, Sam hesitated at the front door. He'd never seen a house so big before, with lights twinkling in every window and a garden that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale. "It's okay," Mrs. Carter said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "This is your home now." Sam looked at her, his face full of doubt, but he stepped inside. And for the first time, he felt warmth, not just from the fireplace crackling in the living room, but from the smiles of the people who surrounded him. The next few days were like a dream. The Carters made sure Sam had everything he needed: new clothes, hot meals, a room of his own. Liam and Maya didn't leave his side, constantly dragging him into their games or showing him their favorite toys. Even Rusty seemed happier, curling up on a soft dog bed near the fireplace. But Sam couldn't shake the feeling that it was all too good to be true. At night, when the house was quiet, he'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long it would last. He was used to things being taken away. He was used to people leaving. And then came the shock. It started with a visit from a social worker. Mr. and Mrs. Carter wanted to adopt Sam officially, to make him a permanent part of their family. Sam didn't know how to feel about it. He was scared. What if they changed their minds? What if they found out something about him and decided he wasn't good enough? But the Carters were determined. They told Sam over and over again, "You're part of our family now. Nothing will change that." The social worker asked a lot of questions about Sam, where he'd come from, what he remembered about his parents. But Sam didn't have many answers. All he knew was that he'd been on his own for as long as he could remember. No family, no home, nothing. That's when the social worker said something that stopped everyone cold. "We'll need to access his birth records," she said. "Every child has a file, even if they've been abandoned." Abandoned. The word hung heavy in the air. Sam felt his chest tighten. He'd spent his whole life wondering why his parents had left him. And now someone might finally have the answer. The Carters worked tirelessly with the social worker to dig up Sam's records. It took weeks, but they finally got a call one evening. "I was there when it happened. I saw the way Mrs. Carter's face went pale as she listened to the person on the other end of the line. She clutched the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. When she hung up, she turned to her husband, her voice trembling. "They found his birth certificate," she said. "Sam, he's my sister's son." The room fell silent. Sam blinked, trying to make sense of the words. "What?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Mrs. Carter knelt in front of him, her eyes brimming with tears. "Sam, you're my nephew. My sister, your mother, she disappeared years ago. We thought she had gone far away, but she must have left you here." Sam's head spun. He couldn't believe it. All this time, he thought he was alone, abandoned. But he wasn't. He had a family. He had always had a family. The revelation brought both joy and pain. The Carters were overjoyed to learn that Sam was truly one of their own, but the mystery of his mother's disappearance hung over them like a cloud. Sam had a million questions. Why had his mother left? Why hadn't she come back for him? But no one had the answers. What mattered, though, was that Sam finally had a home, a real home. The adoption process moved quickly after that, and Sam officially became a Carter. The day they signed the papers, Maya and Liam threw a little party in the living room. Complete with balloons and cake, Sam didn't stop smiling the whole day. But it wasn't just about Sam anymore. His journey had changed the Carters too. They saw how many other kids like Sam were out there, kids without homes, without families, and they wanted to help. With Sam's encouragement, the Carters started a program to support homeless children, providing shelter, food, and education to kids in need. Sam became the face of the program, sharing his story to inspire others. He told the world about the boy he used to be, the boy who thought he didn't matter, who thought he'd been forgotten, and how one act of kindness had changed his life forever. And through it all, Sam never forgot the night he saved Maya and Liam from that burning car. He didn't see himself as a hero, but to the Carters, he was their angel. And in the end, he realized they had saved him too. Some stories have happy endings, but Sam's story, it was more than that. It was a beginning, a new life filled with love, hope, and the promise that no one is ever truly alone. And just like that, Sam's life was transformed. From a lonely boy on the streets to a beloved part of a family he never knew he had. But his story doesn't end here. Remember, Sam didn't just find a home. He found a purpose. Now he's using his own journey to help others like him, proving that no matter where you start, you can always create a brighter future. But here's the twist. What would you do if you were in Sam's shoes? Would you risk everything to save someone else? Or what if you were one of the twins? How would you feel knowing your hero was hiding in the shadows? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories like Sam's, stories that inspire, surprise, and sometimes even shock, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share these incredible tales with the world. Until next time, remember, kindness can change everything.